Good afternoon out there, shopkeepers and do-it-yourselfers. Today we're working on a 1996 F150 to 4.9 inline 6-cylinder internal combustion engine. We'll replace the crankshaft pulley, harmonic balancer. As you can see, it's kind of separating, and that should be up against that tone ring. They're rubber bonded. We'll describe that and demonstrate that a little bit later. I already took the fan off and removed the fan shroud. You need to have the fan off to get the shroud off, but I wanted to be able to give room so you could see what I'm doing to remove this fan clutch, because they don't bolt on. They are they're threaded onto the water pump drive shaft, and you have to get that off. They should not have thread locker on them. I've never seen one come off, but some of them are a real bear to get loose. And you can see somebody's been a pounding on this one. That's why they called me. They couldn't get it off. So I come out here, and you can take a chisel or a solid blunt object, and you can place it on there and hit it right there, and then rotate the pulley just a little bit and hit that surface all the way around, hit all 6 of the surfaces of that nut. And then what I do is I use a pry bar, and I get myself a spot. You see how I'm underneath the nut, or the bolt. I'm under the bolt on the water pump pulley, and I'll grab that, but I'll do it from the bottom side. Do it from the bottom side, because you're going to need to, because the wrench has to go on top. So I've got that on there between the bolt, the water pump pulley bolt, and the fan clutch nut, and then I'm going to rest my pry bar on the air pump pulley so I don't have to hold that. And then take your fan clutch wrench, and it'll go down there between the fan blade bolts and the water pump pulley bolts, and usually put you a 1/2-inch ratchet on there, and well, I've got it kind of stuck because I've got my pry bar in there too far. A lot of road noise out here, working mobile today. Well, anyway, that's how you do it. I've already got it loose, so there's no point in me arguing with it. I can't do it one-handed. If you're not sure which way these turn to come off, the fan spins this way with the engine running. That's the same way it has to rotate. That nut has to turn the same direction to come off. And you can see this, the fan is actually hitting the crank pulley. That's a big problem. So I'm holding the fan with my hand and rotating the water pump, but I'm turning it the opposite direction. That's how it comes off. You gotta be careful you don't gouge your fingers doing it like this. And then when you get out close to the end, go back to the other way, hold the fan, and turn the water pump with your thumb, because you don't want the fan falling into the radiator, gouging a hole in the radiator. You set that up out of the way, and that is when you take your fan shroud off. It's got a tab there and a tab there, and they set in these little spring hook deals, so it only has 2 fasteners that are in the top. Goes in right there, right there, and this had a T10 Torx screw that goes into a little fastener clip nut, and then it pulls right up off of there. Now that crank pulley, the bolt is a 15/16, and the way I do that, because they're pretty tight, I'll take my breaker bar and take a jack handle or a cheater pipe or something, and put this assembly down in there, set the handle up over the frame, well, we need to bump the engine over. If you've got a manual transmission, you want to make sure that you're in neutral. You don't mash yourself up against the house. There we go, we've got it on there. And we're resting against the frame. The engine is going to crank clockwise as we're looking at it, so that's going to loosen that bolt as we jump across our starter solenoid. The key is off, so the engine's not going to start. And let's see if we can get her to come loose. There we go, it come loose. Outstanding. Now, side note, you can see this AC compressor, it's junk. It don't have a pulley on it anymore. Some of your engines, if with the air conditioner, your belt will go around the water pump and come down around the air conditioner and back up over the alternator or the power steering pump, and then down under the tensioner up over the alternator. Well, if you've got to eliminate your air conditioner because that one's junk, you can put a shorter belt on it, and it changes the routing just a little bit. It would come underneath the air pump, go over the top of the water pump rather than under the bottom, around the crank pulley, and skip the air conditioner, but go straight up to the power steering pump. And that's how you can eliminate a high dollar repair, especially if it's an old work truck or just a commuter truck. Maybe you don't have the money to put a compressor on it, but that's how you can do that. It just takes a shorter belt. Anyway, we got the crank pulley bolt off. It's like I say, it's a 15/16. Once you spin that loose, you can take it out by hand generally. Now we got to get a puller to pull that pulley off. And when you're setting up your puller, you're going to need a 3-groove puller because it's a tripod mount, and you can't go opposite. And usually they're 3/8 thread, 3/8 16 thread, so we got 3 3/8 bolts with flat washers on them, and we got the press bolt. Then you got to pick which one of these two that you want to use, or even a flat, but we're not going to use a flat. We're going to use a conical because I like the way it centers itself on the crankshaft. But this one might go inside the hole just a little bit, so we want to avoid that. So I'm going to use the bigger one, and it'll still go through the hole of the crank pulley, and it won't risk going inside and damaging the threads in the crankshaft. So we're going to use this one, but we're going to put it on the puller first, and turn it over. As the press bolt goes through, then we'll put this piece on there, and then you've got a top side and a bottom side of your press. I guess it really only matters if you're where your bolts go through are real narrow. You want to be away from this shoulder, but I always do it with that side outward from the pulley. We'll set it down there and start getting the bolts in. Now you want to get your bolts, all 3 bolts in there pretty even, so that when your press comes out, you're pressing even and squarely on the pulley. I took the outer ring off, it was falling off, and it's not supposed to be like that. But that gave me about a ½ inch more room to see where my bolts were threading into the pulley at. This will take a bit. Now these bolts don't have to thread all the way in. You don't have to run them in there an inch. You only need to go in about 3/8 to a ½ inch, and that'll be enough that they'll grab the pulley well enough, grip it, and when you start cranking on this bolt, you want to keep that from rotating, and that will force this in against that and pulling that out and take that off. So I have to get a wrench. I would rather use an end wrench, but I don't have one that's long enough, so I'm going to use my adjustable wrench to give me more leverage, and I'm going to put this in there between one of the bolts, and that will just keep the pulley itself, or the crankshaft, from rotating, and it will rotate the adjustable wrench. And well, I can demonstrate for somebody that don't know. Maybe it'll hold itself still. See, this is not turning, but this is. I don't think it's going to rotate. That's good. And I don't like to use adjustable wrenches, but sometimes you need to. I would want a longer wrench. My longest 9/16 wrench that I have with me in my truck is only about 6 inches long, so I'd be down here with very little leverage to make me work harder. So this to make me work easier. It'll probably take about 15 or 20 turns. Now then, there you can see what's going on here. When it's getting loose enough, but you still can't pull it off, and you can switch up your heavy adjustable for a short 9/16 wrench. That's where your press pin, that would actually be like your thrust, that pushes into the end of the crankshaft, and it doesn't do any damage at all. Let's see. I don't know. There you go. Goes in right there. And the smaller one will go up inside there, and you don't want that. The big flat one, it'll blunt up against it, but it kind of wants to slip into that hole a little bit because it's not flush all the way across, but it doesn't center it. That's why I like to use the cones. And when we before we get ready to put back on, we have to take the tone ring off and put it over on this one. And I'm not sure that these are even. They look like the distance from here to there, and from there to there, and there to there is the same, but we're going to put a mark right here so we know that the tone ring is going to line up with the keyway. Just in case there's a slight bit of difference, that's going to be for your ignition timing. We want to make sure that it stays in the right relationship. And these Torx bits have those little anti-tamper jobs on there, so we got to get the right set and get them out of there. Need to get a ratchet and take them bolts out. So these 3 bolts thread into those 3 holes. Like I say, they only need to go in about 3/8 of an inch to get a good grip, so they don't slip through the threads, and pull that dude right out of there. And let's turn that over and we'll get them bolts out. Well, those bolts, that's a 27. I don't know if you can see it or not. it's been cut off for one reason or another, but it does fit. However, I can't get them loose, and I don't have a cold chisel. If I had one, I would put it like right there on the bolt and hit the end of that with a hammer and drive it that way. Or if I had an impact driver, I would put it on there, and the impact driver goes on it like that. It's like a screwdriver, but it's got mine's got a 3/8 drive bit on the end of it, and you put a socket that'll fit this tool, and you rotate it and hit it with a hammer, and it drives a turning force into that screw. Usually break these when you do that, but anyway, I also forgot I need to get an installer that will put this pulley, not this one, but the new one, back on. I forgot it, and I more than likely won't be able to get the new pulley up on there far enough to be able to get the bolt to thread into the crank and pull itself on. And that's really a bad way to do it anyhow. You take this installer, it's a press, it's just a series of bolts. One of them will fit into the crankshaft. You thread it in all the way, and then it comes out, and then it's got a nut that turns against a bearing, and it presses. You hold it still and turn the nut, and it forces this on. It pulls it on through the end of the crankshaft and puts all the force right here on the face of the pulley. And you don't want to beat them on with a hammer. That's a bad idea. I mean, if you're out in the desert and that's all you got, I guess that's all you got. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this video since I've got to get these bolts loose, and I don't want to break them. I don't have anything to replace them with out here, so I'm going to go get my press, and I'll just go ahead and heat them up a little bit with the torch. But you can see that pulley, that outer ring, was not supposed to come off. This is just all dry rotted, and it's come loose, and that's why it keeps throwing belts. Not to mention the fan blade was coming around and hitting the outer part of that pulley. So I'll attach a link down below in the description. See, down below in the description down here to the other video that'll be coming up later today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to see how to get it back together if you don't already know how. But anyway, this is how you get it apart, fellas. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the update. Share, like, and subscribe. Comment if you will.